Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six podcast, where we discuss the best stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Chang, and happy Monday to everyone watching this. I know Mondays can seem a little hard, but this Monday is amazing because we got the dub. But not only because we got the dub, but because we got our boy Rudy Tamarchio in the house to celebrate the W. Rudy, how is your week starting off so far?
I would say the news from Saturday is the best thing so far for starting this week. I don't think there's anything that so far has happened this Monday that's been better than that. So I'm happy to have my cake going out.
This is take two. We tried recording this last night. We had some technical difficulties and even some today, but we are trying our best and we are going to make the best of today. So let's get into talking about Saturday's game. I was telling you yesterday when we were going through this originally, this was a statement game for Mario and company. I think, again, you can look at this on its surface. You could say it was USF. Who cares? It was a team, an inferior opponent with inferior talent. You should have played like that. But what did we hear from the national media walking into this? This could be a possible trap game. This is a Cinderella story. Watch out for USF. They've got a dual threat quarterback. If I was to tell you there was a quarterback who rushed 9 times for 22 yards and got a touchdown, who would you think those stats we're talking about?
You wouldn't be talking about Carson Beck in this case. You'd be probably talking about Byron Brown. But as we all know from what happened on Saturday, wasn't the case.
Carson Beck, what an incredible day. 23 for 28, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, he got 2 picks. Got a little ugly there at times. Going back and reviewing it, I'm actually not as worried about the picks that Carson had. One of them, bad throw. The other one, a tip ball. Those things are going to happen, but I still love the tenacity. I still love the accuracy, the deliberate way he goes through each game and studies the defense and can pick out where his players are, what's best. The dude literally is watching all of the Lord of the Rings movies, the extended cuts, while he's in the pocket waiting to get his men open, and he just goes through all his reads. I thought he had a phenomenal day. Again, 2 interceptions aside, we get it. Everyone's going to have a day like that. Even the great Cam Ward had days like that. But again, 340 yards. It's so far season high for this year. What did you make of Carson Beck's performance?
I think he did great. It's one of those where he started out hot again, like he did the previous game. He was 14 for 14 with a, new Miami Hurricanes record back in the Notre Dame game. And then actually, was it 14 or 15? I think it was 15 for 15 to start that game. And then in this game, he was 7 for 7 to start. And that was a couple of deep shots early that, you could have questionably seen a pass interference flag thrown. So it probably it still would have counted towards his total, but everything was precise. Everything was aggressive. Excellent protection from his offensive line. And we got to see, I think the most important part is that we saw a new wrinkle out of the offense that now opposing defenses are going to have to game plan for, which is a mobile running Carson Beck that's making the right decisions in a zone read style scheme. So that's, I don't really worry about the picks too much. Like you said, one was a tip ball that actually wasn't intended for Malachi Toney. I think that's just something in the route running that they'll have to fix. The first one was probably not the best throw, but it's going to happen, everybody, like you said. So I think overall, he's looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah, I again, looking at the landscape of college football after week 3, I feel very confident. Very confident. I actually was joking with a friend who was sitting next to me at the game. I was like, and because we had the Georgia game up on the screen, and it was at the time where Georgia was still struggling with Tennessee. I think they were down by 10. And I always, like, whenever I see Georgia down, I always think of that skit from Wedding Crashers where they visit Will Ferrell, and he's like, idiots, freaking idiots. And that's exactly how I feel when I look at Georgia and they're down, and I'm like, you guys gave up a freaking Lamborghini, pun intended, by the way, for our boy Carson Beck. And I'm just like, this guy. I mean, Gunnar Stockton's great. Congratulations, Georgia. You beat Tennessee. You're doing great. But I think we won that deal. I think Carson Beck is by far the best quarterback right now in college football, bar none. I think what he's doing, again, I wrote it down like this: we had 12 drives. I mean, I'm not going to count the last drive before halftime as a drive because it was literally like 30 seconds we had the ball, basically. 12 possessions, 3 punts, 2 interceptions, 7 touchdowns, 0 field goals. I don't think you get, I mean, realistically, again, two interceptions aside, one of those being a tip, I don't think you get much more efficient than what we saw. I mean, other than 100%, you know what I mean? I'll take 7 out of 12 drives as ending in touchdowns as a pretty good, a result for our quarterback. Breakout day. I mean, I kind of want to go to wide receivers first because again, when we were talking, we've addressed Carson Beck, right? And we've talked about Carson Beck and how amazing he's doing this season. I think he was one of the main question marks coming into the season. Is his arm still as strong? Is he going to make the right decisions? Is he going to be turnover prone? Are his receivers going to drop balls? I think we've kind of pushed that out of the way. Carson Beck, good. Wide receivers, next question. Who are they going to throw to? Coming out party for Keelan Marion and for Joshua Moore. I mean, those guys, lights out. What did you think of the wide receiver core this weekend?
It's nice to see, like, you think an offense, and they're going to have their tendencies. Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels are going to be his new Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey. Yeah, they're slightly different positions, but two favorite targets. And all you see is that it's not one or two guys that you have to shut down, because any game it could be somebody else coming out party, like you said about Joshua Moore, about Keaton Marion. Like it's good to see other players get the ball, and it's good to see that distribution. I mean, if you look at the game, it was 8 receivers had how many, over 50 receiving yards, something like that. Like just absolutely insane in terms of being able to distribute the ball and know that everybody's gonna get an opportunity.
Yeah, and to me, I think this is, again, that's the reason why I call this a statement game, is because, again, if you're looking at the box score, if you're looking at the two logos in the box score, you're thinking, okay, water is wet. beat USF, moving forward. No. I think you got to pay attention to the nitty gritty on this thing, right? So it's like, again, if you're Mario, you want to prove, okay, Florida struggled and lost to USF at home. We're not going to do that. And not only are we not going to do that, we're going to put the pedal to the metal. And we'll even score with our backups in. Like, that's not even going to be it. You saw Gerard Pringle scoring late in the game, Emery Williams and co able to drive the ball down the field like just as well. I think it was actually very impressive to me to watch them drive the ball down the field, as well as Carson and company, that first team. Whereas we were talking about last week with the Bethune-Cookman game, there was that drop-off you could sense between first team and second team, not the rotation, but the actual first-string players and the actual second-string players. There was that drop-off. This year, it was very reassuring to see that second team come in. I mean, granted, it was one drive towards the end, but to see them move the ball as effectively as they did against USF. And so I think another statement in this game, besides beating the number at the time 18 team in the country, you're showing that, hey, we're not just a two stable wide receiver room. We've got a ton of other guys. And I previewed that in the season preview when I was talking about the team. I had mentioned, I'm like, hey, I know this is a question mark, but listen, the word coming out of camp is there are studs out there. And especially the transfer guys that we got in, the Keelan Marions, the CJ Daniels, the Tony Johnson. We saw Tony Johnson, 2 receptions, 64 yards. One of those being a 51 yard reception. Like, again, if you're a wide receiver, hey, you don't need to go to that school up north. You don't need to go do that, Jeremiah Smith. You can keep your butt at home. You can catch some balls. You can get some touchdowns, and you can look really good here at the U. And I think that was a great statement for Shane Dawson and company to make and say, hey, this is not a 2-horse race. We have a stable of wide receivers. We're like Santa Claus over here. Can we just call Carson Beck Santa Claus, and we can just name all the reindeer, all the wide receivers? Because at this point, like, they're all putting up stats. They're all driving the ball down the field. They're all scoring. I mean, the weapons are insane to me.
Better Santa Claus than Oprah, because I think that's been kind of the joke that we saw coming out of Gainesville with DJ Lagway, is that you get an interception, everybody gets an interception. So it'd be Santa Claus is definitely a better comparison for Carson Beck. And then one more point on your end when it comes to the wide receiver room. I think my favorite part about it is that it just puts so much on tape for other teams to worry about. Like, we talked about some of that running ability with Carson Beck, but the fact that you don't have to key in on one or two guys. I mean, it's nice to be Jeremiah Smith in Ohio State and be this elite receiver, or Ryan Williams at Alabama being this elite receiver, but you see what happens when those guys get shut down. It looks like the rest of the offense struggles to move the ball. So the fact that you have multiple weapons, to have a stat line like that against a ranked team says, it kind of brings out warning bells for teams that are playing Miami, because it's one thing to distribute the ball against the Bethune-Cookman, where you're giving everybody valuable playing time in a blowout. You're doing this against ranked competition, a team that on paper should be competitive with you to a certain point. So the fact that your game plan is that you're targeting so many different receivers because you're just finding the guys that are open in your scheme and using your progression makes it really hard for opposing defenses to try to lock everything down.
Yeah, and I think what's awesome about Shane Dawson's game scheming and the way he draws up plans is a lot of the formations we've been using these first 3 games. He's not opening up the playbook, but what you're seeing, what I've noticed is we're using a lot of trip sets. And that will throw people off when you have a whole room full of wide receivers. Is it 0? Is it 7? Is it 3? Is it 10? Like, who is back there? Is it 5? Like 17? Like, who are the guys that are back there? It doesn't, we're quickly proving it does not matter. It does not matter in that trip set who it is. One of those guys is going to get separation and they're going to make you pay. It's really rough. And then here's the worst part about that, because we got to get into who I think is probably one of the GOATs of the team. He's been with us, Mark Fletcher Jr. I mean, 16 carries for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, this guy, beast mode. I mean, Marshawn Lynch. Like you talk about a guy bulldozing through teams. I mean, again, I get it. USF, G5 school, they're the little brother. They're not one of the 2 main schools in UF or FSU. But my God, did that guy just run over people and make them look like rag dolls? Like I every time I watch the condensed game, I just look at these. They look like kids he's playing with. He's just running them over.
Yeah, it's a nice size difference to have. And the nice thing about that running back room, too, is that you only saw 2 of them. I mean, Mark Fletcher can be a feature back if you want him to be. But I think the scary part there, too, is you're not going to see him carry the ball 25, 30 times in a game when you have a full, healthy running back room, because there's a guy named Jordan Lyle who is still, sitting out from his injury that he had over against Notre Dame in the first week of the season. So he's going to be even more rested in other games. So he'll be able to be even more aggressive too, which I think is a scary part for the teams.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about it in the team preview. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm losing you. You're breaking up. My bad.
That's okay. I was just going to say what's nice to see is that Miami can do whatever it wants offensively right now. They play very physical, and they play physical in pass protection. They play physical in their running game, and they've got this wide receiver room. You haven't really seen what this like you said, when it comes to the play calling and what their formations look like, is that it doesn't really matter who you plug into one set. You haven't seen a whole lot out of the tight ends yet. And I feel like part of that is a little bit by design, because you're seeing them do a lot of run blocking. You're seeing them do a lot of pass protect. You're not seeing them really featured yet in the offense. And I think that's just another wrinkle that's going to come in. So all of these pieces play complementary to each other. And whenever they need to be featured in the game is when they're really showing off. You're going deep when you want to early. You're running and grinding out the games later to make sure you can kill as much clock as possible. It's nice to see a balanced offense. And I think when you looked up at the scoreboard and saw the stat line, you saw that it was fairly balanced in terms of what Miami did, almost 600 yards of offense. And you're looking at 300 plus passing and 200 plus rushing. That's a great day.
It's a phenomenal day. And like I was saying earlier, I previewed in this and leading up to the season, I'm like, what you need to know about Miami. And I was talking about this, what I call the King Ghidorah room. I'm not sure if you're a Godzilla fan, but he's the beast that has the 3 heads. And I was saying between Lyle, Fletcher, and Brown, Marty Brown, I was like, do not get it twisted. This is not like we're like, oh, like Fletcher's our guy, and then the other 2 guys, give him some rest of his legs. No, those 2 other guys can easily start for us. And we've seen it in the first 3 games. You know what I mean? And so, again, we can talk about this about other positions as well, but I think this is actually because you brought it up with Lyle being injured and getting some rest. In years past, this is why I'm confident in saying this right now. And I know haters and people will say I'm being a homer and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and it's too early. The sample size is not accurate enough. Is back. The U is back, baby. And this is what I mean. And this is how I said it's a statement game as well. So in years past, if we lost a Lyle, right, this early in the season, you would see a massive drop off. You would notice his absence, whether it was a wide receiver, whether it's Hayden Lowe on the defense side. You know what I mean? And granted, Hayden Lowe, we don't know if he was going to be a starter, but the expectation for him was that coming into his freshman season, he was going to have an impact like Rueben Bain. Again, not as good, but a tenacious impact as a freshman, right? In years past, if we lost players like that, you would see a diminishing of the product, a diminishing of the production. We're still coasting, and if anything, we're getting better. And I think that is a sign of an elite team. And like we talked about last week after Bethune-Cookman, to me, a mark of an elite team is when they play inferior opponents, they put them away and put them away fast. They don't play with their food. They're not going into the third quarter 13-9. They're not struggling against a team that threw 5 picks and they're getting driving down the field in the fourth quarter. Like again, I think I can confidently say the U is back. And not only is the U back, I think we're one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, I think those two things don't necessarily have to be like inclusive to each other. Like I think Miami is one of the best teams in the country right now. They're playing like it. I think their resume is you could put them up against anybody in the country. I think there's actually a lot of grumblings with the top 25 that came out in terms of just how Miami is at 4 right now, but you could argue that
And
Miami
we'll
could be
get to
1
that.
or 2. Yeah, like this. I think there's
Oh, yeah.
pieces there. I'm not gonna say we're back just yet because I think we're back when we finish this regular season. And if they run the table or if they go to Charlotte undefeated, if they win the ACC championship, I think that's a re-announcing yourselves on a national stage and saying, all right, be scared. And people I think are already taking notice, but I'm not going to jump the gun quite yet. I think there's enough that Miami still has to overcome to formally announce
I
that.
agree. I will concede that. I will admit you're right. Maybe we're not back, but it feels like it. I've written the letter. I've put the postage on the letterhead. I just haven't mailed it out yet. We're gonna mail it out. I think we're gonna get there. Okay, so we've covered pretty much all of the offense side. I thought Shane Dawson had a great plan for it. 7 drives for touchdowns, 0 field goals. Again, those picks, they are what they are. But who knows? Those could have easily been touchdown drives as well. I think this game could have easily gotten into the 50s, had we not had that, because that's another thing too we got to talk about. We had a nearly 2-hour rain delay, which really, I mean, you were there, you weren't there for the Irish game, but the vibe seemed to die a little bit in Hard Rock. Not that it was bad, but when you have a 2-hour delay, it's hard for people to stick around. And even despite that, and despite weird things like that happening in the rain delay, I still thought the offense came out and fired on all cylinders.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this too because I think since I missed that Notre Dame game, it's interesting to see like what a game looks like on TV versus what it looks like in a stadium environment.
Mhm.
Like some of the stuff that we talked about from Notre Dame was a little bit of like that collective worry in the second half when Miami was, when they gave up their lead and the game was tied late. Watching from TV, it didn't feel like there was much of a worry. And then when it came to the rain delay, actually, I might be one of the only ones that think this because I don't think the collective stadium had the same thought, but I was actually happy to see the rain delay come because I thought that was actually a momentum killer for South Florida in the sense of
Mm.
they had just driven and gotten that field goal. We had just been forced to our first 3 and out. We were 2 for 2 on our first drives. The third drive we punted. I thought that was a good time for that to happen because I was expecting USF to then try to get into their up-tempo offense and try to get some more points on the board. I think when we came back from that delay, Miami still didn't come out as strong as it had done before, but I think it wasn't so much that it affected us as much as it affected USF as much too. I think they lost a lot of momentum out of it. And we did kind of
Yeah.
play with our food there in that middle 8 when they talk about the, 4 minutes before halftime, the 4 minutes coming back out of halftime. I think we definitely left points on the board. And I think that, like you said, it could have been in the 50s. We probably could have had that score in the 60s if Miami was firing on all cylinders and playing, flawless football.
Yeah. I wouldn't argue against that either. Yeah. I think it was interesting. But again, I think again, when you look at the box score, you're not going to pick up these little nuances, the little minutia, gold nuggets that I think will play a factor later on down the road. But again, you look at a 2-hour delay, the team still comes out, and to your point, even better than they did in that first quarter and a half. And so I'm loving the resilience of this team. I'm loving the fact that they're focused. It's like it's almost like a killer instinct focus right now, like where they are just locked on, ready to drive the ball down the field, and they're doing it. And again, I'm sure when we get deeper into conference play, I'm sure when we play some teams, again, this is no disrespect to USF or Florida, but I think when we get into some more competitive matches, I think we'll probably maybe not see the offense, drive the ball as easily as they have this first quarter of the season so far. But it gives me a lot of hope, and I feel just as confident as I did with Cam Ward last year, with Carson Beck this year, and with the wide receivers this year. I actually more so am more confident with our receivers this year than I was last year, to be honest. Go ahead.
I agree. No, I 100% agree because I think there's something to be said. Yes, they don't have as much experience on the field, but I think what you do
Mhm.
have is a different set of personalities. Like you talked about how they have this like killer instinct. It doesn't seem like they're all about themselves. It seems like they're just all about the work. And when you watch a magician like CJ Daniels make some of the catch that he does, and you're watching Malachi Tony, I think where the effort really comes out is it's not in their route running and their catching. I think it's in the other complementary things they've done so far in the first 3 games, and that's their run blocking. When you talk about some of those big runs by Mark
Yeah.
Fletcher, and you see those blocks by Marion, that block by Tony, like those are guys that are doing extra stuff. That, I mean, it's not
Mhm.
extra if you're looking at really good football. It's just extra in the sense of you don't normally see wide receivers blocking that well, and I think that says a lot about what the team looks like and why that might be a better unit than last year because you don't have any liabilities as of yet. You haven't seen a guy have a flag thrown on them for something. Granted, not a lot has gone wrong for Miami yet. So if they have a
That's very
struggle
true.
on offense, let's see if they have the maturity to handle it. As of right now, they don't look like freshmen. They don't look like freshmen physically. They don't look like freshmen in how they execute. They don't look like freshmen in how they act. So the fact that they're doing everything as a seasoned player, I would almost say that seniority is great at certain positions. It's nice to have a veteran like a quarterback, for example, but I
Yep.
don't think there's this. If we look at like the way the rankings have been done so far, a lot of this is laziness in the sense of they're looking at, oh, well, these guys have been a collective unit for a few years. Oh, Cade Klubnik is a 3-year starter. Oh, Garrett Nussmeier is a 3-year starter. That doesn't mean as much anymore in this day and age because I think as long as you have the right guys and the right, culture, I think you can see that you can go pretty far pretty quick.
Yeah, and before we move to the defense side, I, I also would be remiss to say each week we're kind of having a coming out party for a certain player, and we haven't had anything yet from Lofton or the tight ends group. So be on the lookout. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if in the next 2 or 3 games, you're going to see Lofton have like this ridiculous, like 80-yard game with like 2 touchdowns. Like, it's coming, and it's only a matter of time because the guy's a freak. Like the guy's built like like a Greek god, and trust me, this guy can play fullback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, like anything you put him in, he's going to play. So you would be an idiot to think that we're not about to unleash our tight ends when they lock down our wide receivers. So I'm excited for this offense. I think we've maybe opened up 25% of the playbook in terms of what we can do and what we're ready to show. I will say this though, the one thing I did get, and it took me the third viewing to kind of pick up on this. I do think where Carson makes his mistakes is when the offense gets a little too confident. And we start trying to like thread the needle, and we start trying to like vertically move the ball down the field too much. And you can just say, hey, let that play wasn't meant to be. Throw it away. We'll get Fletcher back in, get him a couple yards, and then we can go back to the passing game. But when we do this rapid fire throwing, and I love the pace and I love the tempo, but I also find it's not as conducive for Carson. And he tends to throw it, not that he gets weaker as his numbers go up, but when we get a little too overzealous with the ball on a drive, it's like, hey, go back to the ground and pound. Like get back to that more balance. And if you go through, I think if you go through the scoring drives, you'll see the most successful drives are a very healthy mixture of passing and running. passing and running. It's not like 6 passes in a row. It's got to be that healthy balance of the two. So I'd love to see that kind of get tightened up, especially as we get into like the Louisvilles, the FSUs, things like that. Like we're going to play some, I think, stronger defenses and people who are going to be playing lights out because it's their Super Bowl, knowing they're playing, which will hopefully be the number 3 team or 2 team eventually. Uh, they're going to want to play lights out. And I want us to make sure we are tight and ready into this. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, can we just talk about the defensive line? I mean, both lines are incredible. Both lines are, you hear it in the national media, but the defensive line is wild, wild. Byron Brown was literally only held to 2 yards. 2 yards. That's what Carson Beck's number should be. Again, if I just put the cover over the 2 quarterbacks and I said one quarterback rushed like 6 times for 22 yards and another quarterback rushed 13 times for 2 yards, I guarantee you would not think it was who it was.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the defensive line is even though like the entire front seven, you had the linebackers in there too, they are the anchor of that defense. The secondary is vastly improved. They still give up some broken plays every now and then, but I think what you're noticing is that Miami is getting home with just rushing 4. They're just
Yeah.
rushing their line, and that's the biggest key to success that you'll have because they're disrupting plays. They're swarming in the way that the whole thing was what? Oh, we need to have a spy on Byron Brown. It wasn't so much that you need to have a spy on him because he was going to be moving and finding open holes. It's just that he was running for his life. And the fact that you can swarm in that way where you might miss the first tackle, if you look at older Miami defenses, if that one defensive end or if that one defensive tackle misses that first hit, that's the difference between a 5-yard loss and a 15-yard gain. In this case, if you miss the first guy, the second guy's there to hit you. The third guy, the fourth guy. There was one play where Brown broke like 2 tackles and was still hit by 5 Miami Hurricanes.
Yep. I was just going to bring that play up. Yeah, that's Heatherman was talking about that. Like Heatherman, and leading up to the season in camp, he was like, our focus is get heads to the ball. I want all of our players on the ball. And you're seeing that again when with the interception by Rueben Bain in the Notre Dame game. Like it's like linemen should not be getting picks. Like that's just not normal. You know what I mean? Like it happens, yes, but it's not the normal. And what you're seeing with this team, like you were saying, is you're seeing so many people. We missed the first, we're getting at you with 2 or 3. And it's very rarely. And I'll get into really quick, just because I people are going to be about what about the explosive plays? Again, you're talking about a team in South Florida whose average yardage to get a touchdown was 31 yards or 30 something yards, meaning when they score a touchdown, most of the time it's 30 plus yards that they're getting. It means these explosive plays. It's not like they're driving the ball into the red zone and then pounding it in. They're having to bomb it. And they did the same thing to Florida. They did the same thing to Boise State. We can get caught up in our PTSD from last year with explosive plays and say, uh-oh, are we worried about this? But at the same time, I think we can also sit there and go, that's kind of their bread and butter. You're going to get a few of those. But what I loved was despite those explosive plays, they didn't score on any of them. There wasn't a single a play where they scored on an explosive play. But also, the red zone defense, they may have gotten in the red zone. They may have gotten within the 15, 5-yard line, but they held them. And they held them to a field goal. And I think that is amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's a sign of a good team. I mean, it shows you what Miami was able to do defensively, and I think it shows you what USF was able to do against Miami and Florida. Getting field goals worked against Florida because Florida was shooting itself in the foot constantly. They couldn't move the ball offensively themselves. So you're keeping that game close. USF could not do that against Miami because those field goals didn't mean anything because Miami would drive down the field and score 6 every single time that they had the ball for the most part outside of, 2 or 3 stops. So I think that wasn't so much about what USF could do as much as it was about Miami and being able to hold them.
Yeah, and again, just like the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you saw Booker Pickett Jr. get a sack. Like, it's not like we're seeing just the stars play and just the stars make plays. You're seeing the people in the rotation, and I keep wanting to harp on this because this is, I think, what separates this year's Miami team from even, let's just talk about last year's team. Again, like I'm going to go back to the offensive side of the ball to just make this point, then we'll come back to the defense. But we only had 4 wide receivers, or 3, I think, last year that were trustworthy for Cam Ward. Cam Ward only threw to 3 or 4 guys, and that was it, right? And when the other players would get on the ball, like get in on the drive, they weren't seeing as much success as the original 4 starters. This year, moving over, you take the same thing to the defensive side of the ball. Those guys are all coming in, rotating, still getting stops, still shutting wide receivers down, still hitting. Like, hit stick is back. That Jacoby Thomas, like, that was per Armando Blunt. Like these are hits that are like for the forced fumble that I'm loving to see. Are we getting as many takeaways as the turnover chain era? No, but I'm still loving the tenacity. I'm loving the as many helmets are getting to the ball as they're getting. I again, I don't want to say we're back, but this defense looks amazing. But top to bottom, what linebacker room's a little meh, but it's only meh because the secondary and the line are just so stellar that they're overshadowing them.
Yeah, I would almost say, like, here's the thing. You want to talk about the turnover chain era too with their defense. I think what's nice to see that's different. I mean, we talked about this in our first take that we had from technical difficulties, but essentially the defenses, this is a dominant physical defense so far from all facets. Whereas the Manny Diaz defenses were a little undersized and were heavily relied on blitzing. It was something that if you were able to accommodate Miami's pressure, if you're able to handle it, you can make some big plays. And I think the turnovers there were being forced a lot just out of that kind of that hectic nature of they're trying to create as much chaos through blitzing as possible. Whereas this one, it's all physical ball. It's being able to drop back into coverage, but you could still get home to the quarterback just rushing your 4 defensive linemen. And I think what would be an interesting study is to actually look so far at all of the turnovers that Miami has forced on defense so far. They all occur within like 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. I mean, everything
Yeah.
is either a running back getting hit either in the backfield or like right at the line of scrimmage. It's a sack fumble. It's an interception that's caused by pressure. So the ball's being thrown away. You're not seeing a lot of like desperation plays where a guy has to, try to punch a ball out on a long play or a long interception. Everything's really close. And that's showing you dominant football at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I think the difference with this year and last year, obviously, night and day in terms of the results. But where we were at, because you have to remember, if we rewind and we go back to this time last year, we were still confident in our defense. We still looked good. We had already beaten Georgia. We already beaten Florida. We looked really good against Florida. Ball State looked really good. So, like, again, understanding inferior opponent, but we still felt good. But I think there were certain undertones that were starting to show up around this time of the year where you're like, not sure about that. That's looking a little bit. Not this year. This year, if anything, yeah, this year it feels like whatever adjustments need to be made, we are making them either in game or in between in the practices during the week. It's like I said, OJ Federico had a little bit of a rough game this past weekend. He got burnt, I think twice. I remember seeing, and then just even watching the game, he was a little off. Not sure if he's battling something, but I can guarantee you, going into the UF game, whatever that issue was, it's not going to happen again. I don't think that he's going to have the same problems he had this past weekend. And again, like I said, just cap off to the defense for this bend and break mentality. Again, the PTSD from last year where you see the explosive plays, they get in the red zone, you're like, oh, here we go. Team's going to make a comeback. They're going to be in it. Here we go. And again, you can look at this box score and see 49-12 and be like, oh, USF rolled over. No, they didn't. They played their hearts out. That is a good football team. And I know the score wouldn't tell you that, but I think they're a good football team. Great? No. Championship contender? No. Good? Yes. And so I don't want it to go past anyone to think, oh, like, again, we should have beat them. This is what should be happening. Yes, but you have to take the little things that are happening in these games and understand they're going to pay dividends 5 games down the road when we're looking at a, possibly 8-0 Miami, right? You know what I mean? Like we'll know. We'll say, hey, you saw this in week 2 and 3, or week 1 and 3. You saw this in week 4 against Florida. You know?
Yeah, there was something interesting with the OJ Frederick situation too, where I couldn't tell if they were just trying to put their best receiver on him in coverage because number 11 for USF, I forget if his last name is Singletary or Singleton. It's something like that.
Singleton.
Yeah,
Singleton.
Singleton.
Yeah,
So
Singleton.
every time he was lined up on Frederick and they saw it was man coverage, he would put his hands up and he would go to his quarterback and be like, "You want to get me the ball like real quick because I have this one-on-one coverage." And what I think that's happening there is that Frederick was one of the better defensive backs last season for Miami in his freshman year. And in terms of like pure coverage, he was fine. The problem was that was not a very physical secondary. And I think what they're looking, what Miami is trying to instill right now is that they want their defensive backs to be just as physical as their front seven. They want them to jam at the line of scrimmage. They want them to be able to like, hand fight the entire way through. And that one play early where he got burnt, he missed his jam. He literally like went to go try to jam the guy and he missed.
Yep.
And then the rest of the time he was just going after it. So I think it's just him trying to learn a different style of play that everybody else that's come in, your Zechariah Poisers. Yeah.
But here's another, now that you point that out, I had to go look this up because I wanted to see. I'm like, maybe this was the reason why. I mean, you also look it up. There's a size difference. OJ Federico is listed at 6 foot 180, which probably means he's probably more along the lines of like 5'10", 5'11", a buck 80. But you have Singleton, who's literally 6'3", 215. I mean, it is a mismatch. You're talking about nearly 40-pound difference. I mean, that's what's gonna happen. So that makes a lot of sense now that I think about it, and we're discussing this. And again, little things you got to really pay attention to because you can overlook them and cast them off as this or that. But it's like, hey, like again, the explosive plays. And this is the difference between this year and last year. I feel like Heatherman will see something like that again and go, okay, the next time we see that they're doing this, we're going to keep a safety over the top just to make sure. You know what I mean? Like we won't spy the QB because we'll know they're going to throw because there's going to be some sort of a signal. Obviously, it won't be hands up, but it'll be maybe tap on the head, whatever the case may be. Again, and that's the trust I have in Heatherman, opposed to Guidry, where it was like, again, maybe his first year he made the adjustments because of injury, but that last year, that abysmal effort to make the necessary adjustments. This year, not the same team. Anything in the game, Rudy, you wanted to go over that we may have missed before we move over to the top 25?
No, I mean, the only thing I'll just finish on the defense is that you could see they communicate. They all know what they're trying to do. They all know what each other's assignments are, and they are actually lined up with their guys, immediately. As soon as the play is over with, they're lined up. You don't see like a guy uncovered or somebody that it looks like they actually are lined up to the other team's formation very, very early on, and that was something that was missed last year. So good to see at least on that end. It's not like there's a wide open guy at any given time.
Yeah. So moving over, we have the top AP top 25. I'm probably going to go a little nuclear on this because I don't know what games these people are watching. I don't know what these people think. Are they just like kind of just like, hey, this seems like a decent spot to put them? But absolutely not, because I don't understand. I don't understand how you rank LSU above us. Again, they barely beat a team by 10 points, which, by the way, if DJ Lagway, you go through DJ Lag, you eliminate just one of DJ Lagway's picks, that pick 6, right? They're only beating Florida by 3, right? They're only beating Florida. And we'll figure out what we beat Florida by. But you can kind of do some deductive reasoning, and you can kind of just do some a little complicated math and just look at, okay, well, if USF beat them by 1 in the Swamp and we beat USF by 20 something, okay, that means we're that much better than UF, which means how did LSU play? You can do some easy math and just realize the gaps and the spreads are not the same and they're not equal. And not only that, I get, LSU went in the portal. They got a ton of defensive talent to flip their defense around, and they do have a pretty decent defense. I mean, 5 picks, but that's also a chicken egg thing. Is DJ Lagway just absolute garbage, and that's why they looked as good? Or do they look that good and made DJ Lagway look like garbage? You don't know, right? But again, stats aside, when you look and you watch these games, I think we are a top 3 team. I think that you can make an argument that we are better than Ohio State because again, Ohio State, you look at their victory against Texas. Texas just struggled against UTEP. That is the University of Texas El Paso. That's not Utah. That's UTEP. Okay? The
Yeah.
minors. You got to get
Yeah.
the minors.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think the way the AP poll has gotten so lazy, where it's just we're going to look at what the logo is and we're going to judge everything based off of the logo and not see what the body of work is. And I think something that it's great when your team is good, like when you're Miami fans and your team is good. We watch as much football as we can because we're excited and we want to see how we line up against other teams. And I think anybody that's watched good football over the years knows what a struggle looks like versus what two teams that are kind of mediocre look like. And I think we got our answer this past weekend to what we talked about after week 1, which was that Texas Ohio State game. Did that look like I'm going to go a little old school here with Pick Six podcast listeners and viewers and say, was it a Timmy Jimmy fight or was it just a really good struggle between two teams? I think we looked at Clemson and LSU and we noticed that was the Timmy Jimmy fight. I think the jury was still out on Ohio State and Texas. And I think the resume that we've now seen after the initial two games where, Texas struggled with like an Austin P or whoever. No, I'm sorry. Austin P played Georgia, but like they struggled with two opponents that they should have beaten absolutely handily. And if you watch Texas struggle against UTEP, Arch Manning is running for his life, and he was the only reason why they moved the ball. He struggled to throw. They struggled to run. All they could do was have Arch Manning, do it all himself and play hero ball, and that's not going to be successful against good teams. Ohio State is an elite defense, but they struggled with Ohio for the better part of, 2.5 quarters. So, yeah, if you look at the resumes right now in the top 5, Miami looks as one of the most impressive teams in the country.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like you look at the whole Manning situation and the poor kid's getting destroyed this week on social media and in the pundits' eyes. Are we surprised? Are we really surprised? Let's look at this really quick. Let's rewind. Arch Manning sat 2 years behind Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers is a third-string quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. He is not leading an NFL team right now to the playoffs, or looks like he's going to be leading a team to the playoffs. Third string quarterback for a team that is 0-2 right now. No disrespect to Quinn Ewers, but I don't think anyone saw Quinn Ewers being a prolific pro quarterback, right? Not to mention, it's not like the weapons in his system were great. The guy could go throw a really good fade. The guy couldn't thread the needle and dart it in. He wasn't explosive in that sense. So you have a very one-dimensional quarterback who is starting over for 2 years, this generational talent, this legacy talent in Arch Manning. Do you think if Arch was going to be as prolific as everyone expects him to be, he would have sat that long?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it shows you what the starting job or what that fight would have looked like in the offseason, and he would either won it outright. But what was interesting about the whole Quinn Ewers situation is that it didn't seem like he was ready to go to the league just yet, and there was a lot of rumors at the towards the end of the season about whether he was going to transfer to a different school. So it was one of those things where it didn't seem like he was losing his job because he was just getting beat in practice. They were going to force him out for this newer, more sexy pick because it's what all the fans and probably what the donors.
I was going to say, well, at that point, you have to remember they're paying an Arch all this money in NIL. They got to get some sort of ROI. They got to get some sort of return on investment. And so I think at that point they were just like, hey, it's very similar to what happened to Georgia, where they were like, hey, we got this Gunnar Stockton here. We got to start using him or he might just get up and leave. And I think that's kind of what happened with Texas, where they were like, we got to put Arch in whether we like him or not, or whether Sark thinks he's ready or not. And Sark will tell you, till he's blue on Monday that Arch is their guy and he believed in him the whole time. But I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from now we go through and hear in the documentary that, yeah, there was always questions around Arch. And again, we're only in week 3. Arch could, from here on out, have a lights out season, win the Heisman and be the most prolific quarterback and be the number 1 draft pick. But it's not looking like that. It's not looking like that. And again, we said this last week, and I've been harping it. I'm going to harp it all season. When someone shows you who they are, you got to believe them. And we're seeing it with Ohio State. We're seeing it with Texas. You're seeing it absolutely. We're talking about Timmy Jimmy fights again, going back to the LSU Florida game. I mean, that if that wasn't Timmy Jimmy to a T, I mean, I don't know what is a better example. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier watching his lineman literally hug and cuddle a defensive lineman down to the ground and watch the flag go. All you got to do is throw the ball away, take the penalty, and keep it moving. The guy directly throws it to a DB and Florida's DB. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like this offense is absolutely horrific. And if maybe I'm wrong, maybe Florida comes in here next week and it's a 17-14 game and we're like, oh, you know what? That's why Garrett Nussmeier looked really pedestrian, because he played a really good defense. But something tells me that's not the case, because again, we saw the same struggles against Clemson and Louisiana Tech. You know, you can say they won Louisiana Tech by 2 or 3 scores. That's fine. They should be blowing. If that was Joe Burrow's team, if that was Joe Burrow LSU, that would have been a 49-12 game like what we had at Louisiana Tech. And it wasn't that. Or at least it wasn't that for the majority of the game. And then again, looking at Penn State, who has Penn State played? FIU, Villanova, Utah State. Not only that, not struggling, but playing with their food in each of those games. I'm not understanding why you think they're better than Miami, who is going against teams, by the way, who are quote unquote the best defenses, who quote unquote have guys on the line, who are quote unquote representatives or candidates to make it into the college football playoff. We're handling business. And again, you can look at the Notre Dame game and be like, "Oh, you guys only won by like a field goal." Again, watch with your eyes. That was not an even match. One team was out physicaling the other team. And we've done it all week. So for us to be at number 4, I think is just blatant disrespect. I think the fact that it took 3 weeks for Vanderbilt to get on the board. Okay, South Carolina, they're again, I don't want to say they're frauds, but this is the stuff we're talking about when we say, what are these people watching? Right? Like, what are we doing? I don't even another wild thing. Notre Dame at 24 at 0-2. I think they're the first team in the history of AP polling to be 0-2 and still be in the top 25.
Look, if there was going to be a team that's 0-2 to stay in the top 25, it's always going to be Notre Dame. Regardless of who they played on their schedule, they probably could have started 0-2 against Long Island University and Florida A&M, and they would still somehow be in the top 25 because they started at number 5 or whatever it was in the country or 5 or 6. I'm not going to knock their resume too much because Miami obviously was their week 1. They played for the national championship last year. I think if anything, you put them at 25 at all, if you're going to keep them in there, but it's kind of unfair to the rest of the country to see what other teams have put on paper so far. You talked about Vanderbilt, for example. That wasn't Lenora Sellers pulling up Gimpy because he ran for 50 yards and he got hurt. He got hurt because he got hit. And Vandy played very physical. And this is something that we talked about this in our take 1 as well. But it seems like the most physical football teams are the ones that are really separating themselves right now and are seeing the most, basically getting the most respect in terms of what their opponents are giving them. Vanderbilt played really, really physically. Miami has played extremely physically. Ohio State's defense has been a very physical team to play. That's what's the difference is right now in college football. And I think that's where you're kind of seeing this regression now. Even look, let's even talk about Florida State. What they did to Alabama week 1. Defensively, they played extremely physical. Offense, I would argue, not so much. I think they just ran into a team that just hasn't, that's just not there. I mean, Alabama looked good against Wisconsin, but let's be honest, this is not the Alabama teams of the Nick Saban era. They are on a downward trajectory and they don't look anywhere near like they used to. So this poll was definitely bad in terms of rankings. I just think Miami, at least from our side, selfishly, we're at 4 now. That's great. We jumped up a spot. We're where we need to be. We could argue we're 1.
I think it will all work itself out. I think this is what I think. I think the pollsters are 1. It's one of those things where they knew they messed up in the preseason after week 1 and they were like, oh crap, how do we fix this? And so they kind of like started moving some pieces around, but they're like, we don't necessarily want to pull the trigger on certain teams because they're not historic teams that have been in the AP top 25, and maybe things will pan out and will still look good. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, we're just gonna paint over this for a little bit and it'll eventually blend in. But something tells me again after next week, if things go the way I think they'll go against Florida, I think you're going to see us jump into the top two. I realistically do. I think that you will see the consistency. You'll see the teams playing other teams that, again, it's not may not be equal, but you'll be like, okay, well, we know what LSU did to Florida, and look what Miami did to Florida, and that if we think LSU is here, it just goes through like, as you go down the list of like comparison and deductive reasoning. Okay, this is a better team, and again, I know I sound like a homer, but tell me a team that's been consistent. Georgia, I thought the Georgia game against Tennessee should have been a knockdown, drag out fight. It should not have been a shootout. You're talking about a Georgia team that prides itself on defense, that says its defense is its strongest point. They let, for all intents and purposes, Tennessee won that game. They put in a 12-year-old kicker with like 10 seconds left to kick a game-winning field goal. Like that, I'm sorry, like you did not win. You won in overtime, but that's to me, I don't consider that realistically a victory. It's going to be a victory on paper, yes, but I'm like, when you look back, I'm like, you put a 12-year-old in. If I put my son in to kick a ball right now, he's not going to kick it. He's not going to make it.
I think the thing about Miami's success in the poll and why everyone's so bullish on them, and I say everyone, I mean like all of us Miami fans. Yeah, we do sound like homers. We sound like we're drinking the Mario Cristobal Kool-Aid here, but it really does come down to how the game is played in the trenches. And like we've talked about for this show about how the defensive line looks elite, the offensive line is elite. No matter what another team's bread and butter is, whatever their identity is offensively, if you can't protect your quarterback, if you can't keep a defensive line from penetrating and getting into your backfield when you run the ball, you have no offense. If you can't do that to the opposing team's offense because their line is so good that they could do whatever they want to you at will, that is a recipe for disaster if you're playing a team that is elite on both sides of the ball like that. So that's what makes it look so, that's what makes us really high right now. And that's why when you watch other teams play, you don't see that.
Yeah, and to me, it's like watching the games this weekend, and it's been great to actually see this, because normally most weeks or most seasons, when you get to this week, you're just like, okay, I think this is the team in the SEC. It's either Georgia or Alabama or Texas. It's like one of these three teams, and then you have your outliers and maybe your Ole Miss or your A&Ms. But I think the SEC is wide open, and if I'm being honest, I think not only is the SEC wide open, I don't even think their best talent is leaps and bounds above the Big Ten's talent, the Big 12's, well, Big 12 maybe, but even us. Like, I don't see it like in years past where you'd go, okay, whoever wins the SEC, they're going to make it the furthest in the playoffs. I just don't see that this year. I think there's more parity than there's ever been in the SEC.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks to the transfer portal, thanks to NIL, there's nobody that is 3-4 deep anymore. Everybody is your starters and maybe a couple of your backups, and that's where Miami. Look, we may not have the depth that we think we need right now, but if you look at the national landscape, nobody has that depth, and that's where Miami feels like they're in a good place. And I think we'd all argue that is a good place.
Yeah, and I just see going through this right now, I wonder, do you see the ACC maybe getting in 3 teams for the college football playoffs?
Not at this point. Like at this point, it looks like it's going to be a 2-horse race with Miami and Florida State, depending on how the rest of the season goes. You got to hope that, look, we're going to be super high on Miami going into Tallahassee and getting business done in possibly another, dominant fashion, or in a way that probably not as close as everyone thinks it could be. And if that's the case, you got to hope that Florida State doesn't crumple and that they stay, successful. If that's a close game and it's just a 1-loss Miami or a 1-loss Florida State that still gets business done, I think those are the only two you're going to see out of the ACC. Not because the rest of the conference can't prove itself, but because, we can't expect the same bums who are doing the AP poll now to see what's different in the ACC from a few weeks from then.
Let's talk about this really quick. It sounds crazy, right? That the ACC could have a 3-person race, a 3-team race. But here's the thing. Georgia Tech does not play Florida State, and they do not play UM. Their next opponents are Temple, Wake, Virginia Tech, Duke, Syracuse, NC State, BC, and Pitt in the ACC. That means they could make it to the ACC championship game and go undefeated in AC play. Maybe we lose to Georgia, but that would knock out FSU because we would beat them, and it would make a rematch between Georgia Tech and Mario. And how crazy would it be for Mario to finally get revenge on Georgia Tech and beat them for his first and Miami's first conference championship? Wild stuff, guys. Wild stuff still ahead this season. I mean, I'm going to go off on a limb. This is probably going to be one of the best college football seasons we've had in recent memory. At least for us as UM fans, it's definitely going to be. But again, every week I get more excited. We've got UF coming up this week. We have made it, guys, to the end of another episode. Guys, I'm so excited for this week. Be good, win the week. We will see you guys on Thursday for our Florida preview and week 4 preview predictions. Be good, y'all. Win the week. And as always, go Canes.